going through recession, there are different ways to go for it. You can go and raise funds and have enough funds. You can also have no team. And I would like to introduce you to John Buckman, who is just sitting here. And he promises his presentation won't suck. That's not me. That's not my slide. That's John's slide. And John is a really low profile. I mean, you're not like a big, you're not PRing yourself enough. I think you should do it, much more. And it's great. And John has managed to create a number of sites, including Magnatune, which is one of them, running with a team of one, right? Which is John. And so being break-even, and an entirely decentralized way of working, which I personally think fascinating. I'm learning a lot from John. I think we're going into a world where work will completely change, and he's collaborating with people around the world to build a virtual company that has no employees, and which is break-even, that's all he likes, with a very creative way of doing it. I'm learning a lot from John all the time, so I hope you learn as well. I'm sure you will learn as well. John, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. And can we cut the music over there? Maybe the... and John, please, you should start now.
So thanks, Loic, for the introduction. So my name is John Buckman. I'm going to be talking about a completely different model for running your life, running a company. And I hope in the next 10 minutes you'll come away and say, wow, that presentation didn't suck. And hopefully that will be the takeaway. So the very first thing, here we go. The presentation can be downloaded from slideshare.net. If you don't know SlideShare, it's an interesting website where everyone can upload their PowerPoint. I wish more presentations today would upload to either a PDF or their blog, because it's really a crucial way to have an influence beyond the people here today. As part of also having a greater influence, I'd recommend more presenters license their presentations under an open license, such as the Creative Commons license that this is licensed under. In this case, you are free to download the presentation, remix it, reuse it in whatever way you want. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with me, by all means, send me an email. So this speech is entitled, Employees Suck. And the reason I came up with that title is because I ran a 50-person company for 12 years, and while it was good at making money, I was miserable. And many of you who run companies or who are in companies, you might be swept up and doing the day-to-day, but are you actually having a good time? Are you enjoying yourself? Do you think you're having a real impact on society, one that you'll tell your kids and grandkids about? And if not, is that really how you want to spend your time? So one of the ways that employees suck is, quite honestly, managing is absolutely no fun. By managing, I mean getting people who don't really want to do their job to do their job anyway, to orchestrate jobs that will fill time, to build out a staff. It's no fun at all. What is a lot of fun is coordinating a lot of talented people, getting the best in the field to work together and multiply you, not having to motivate them, but simply getting everyone to work in a coordinated whole. That's really fun. Not only is firing not fun, especially if people are good enough, but they're nice people, but except in a few places, really America and Britain, it's quite hard to fire people. And so as you go about your entrepreneurial travels, you'll find it quite hard to bring on the best and keep them, simply because of the way the rules of the world work. If you work much more with freelancers, you'll have a much better time. I also think the way the internet is changing, that permanent employees just are not mostly needed. You absolutely need a core of employees to make your product. Beyond that, not really, because changing circumstances are always requiring new skills. Think for a second, instead of retraining new employees, try getting contractors for your current projects. The only thing I'll note about that for anyone who's tried outsourcing is that it's virtually impossible to get people to cooperate virtually. So you do need a core of talented, somewhat homogeneous, somewhat culturally homogeneous people to work together. It can be 3 people, it can be 1, it can't usually be more than 10 to make the product. And the model for this is Hollywood, which largely makes massive $100 million films with virtually no employees. For each film, they decide what is best needed, and they bring that team together for a time, and then everyone disperses. Now, flipping it around a second, for those of you who are employees, you know that it's no fun to have a boss. And one of the reasons is no one can actually work for 8 hours straight. You go to the job, you have to flirt, you have to have lunch, you take some tea, because it's just boring, it's tiring. It's not how our brains actually work. They really need diversity. And if you go to work every day, you can feel this life force being drawn out of you on a daily basis. And this is especially true if you're quite talented. The reason this is especially true is if you're quite talented, you probably are worth 10 times more to the company, to the project, than anyone else. But at best, you're going to see a 3 times pay, or most of the time, actually 20%. So you're stuck as a very creative person who's driving the team in an environment where you're simply not recognized. And because of hierarchies and how companies are structured, employees always make less than their bosses. It doesn't matter if you're the key marketing, sales, or programmer, you're going to make less than your boss. And that just doesn't make sense in a knowledge economy. But there it is. You don't have to participate. If you are an employee, you know this for a fact that you're mostly doing dumb work. Someone has to fill your day with things to do. There are very few satisfying tasks. And the incentive is, why should you be clever? Why shouldn't you just put the time in? Why should you do your best work? You're paid by the hour, after all, not for your contribution. And the solution really is to get out of that game. And I know this sounds scary, but that's why Loic invited me here. Instead of selling your time, which isn't really worth much, everyone has time to give, and it's very hard for an employer to evaluate. Instead, make intellectual goods, non-tangible goods, now that the internet is here and has democratized distribution and manufacturing. May be worth less than the hours you put in which case, very good and you should go get a job. But if you are better than your time, then this is a much better way to go. Forget good enough work. Try to do great work. The reason I'm talking about this is because as I went through my process, and it's maybe a little bit easy for me to say since I did put a decade into a company and came out okay out of it, but I wasn't especially happy with what I was doing, and I felt like the impact I had was minimal in a bigger company. And also, a large company becomes all about making a profit and not so much about making an impact. How do you wake up every day when it's cold and raining and go do your job and feel excited about it? Do you have other goals? For example, are you interested in having children? If so, it's quite hard to do, especially, for example, if you're a woman, it's hard to do the dual career thing. But if you work at home, you have all sorts of other opportunities, and you have alternative schedules. You don't have to ask your boss to pick up your children at 3 o'clock. You just do it, and you work later in the day to cover for it. Do you enjoy learning? Do you really like being challenged and having to acquire new skills? If so, quit your job, because they're not paying you to learn. They're paying you to put hours in. Here are the quick steps, at least that I see, for self-employment. The very first thing is just start thinking of lots of ideas. Start reading science fiction, futurism, start watching TED. Just start writing ideas down. And then this is the crucial step. Do nothing. Don't do anything with those ideas. Just keep thinking of ideas and writing them down. And the reason is that in 3 months, most of those ideas are going to be shit. And it's going to take you at least 3 months, if not 6 to 9 months, to get those ideas together. And too many people jump on the first ideas they have and start doing them, and they shut their brain down, and they stop thinking of other clever things. This is my own personal test. I call it the pub test. I spend half the year in England, and Brits are notoriously cynical and also well-educated, which makes them a very tough audience for new ideas. I go to a pub with a friend, it's noisy, we're having a beer, and then in about 15 seconds, I explain my idea. If they don't stop drinking their beer and pay attention, my idea is not good enough. And it's very simple. It's because a noisy pub with beer, lots of cute other people around, is what the internet is like. There are tons of distractions. There are tons of things pulling people away. If you're not interesting enough to get someone to look up from their beer, it's not going to happen. Try again. Now, think about your product. What this really comes down to is some sort of elevator pitch, some sort of very simple explanation. It's called an elevator pitch because if you're stuck in an elevator with someone famous, let's say Chris Anderson of TED, and you want to speak to, at TED, what would you say in those 15 seconds that would excite him, that would make him take your card and call you back? I can't stress this enough. Before you do any work, write the first line of your press release. So many companies leave this till later. They make the product, they get it to ship, and then they write the press release, and they realize that the first line of their press release is boring. The product's already made, there's nothing you can do, you have a boring product. You need to work the other way around. How is that first line of that press release going to get people interested? Next, write the first paragraph of your homepage. This is the follow-on. Someone says, oh, that sounds interesting, tell me more. You have 3 or 4 sentences to get them excited. Make the homepage. Finally, hunt for unique names. This is actually not nearly as important as you would think. I mean, a lot of companies like my own, Magnitude, or even one like Seismic, are not the best names in the world, but if they're really good ideas and they're memorable, that's fine. It's not a problem. This is really crucial. Don't borrow money. Figure out how to do the idea extremely cheaply. Next, finally, there's a lot of preview steps here, I know. Make a mock-up, show it to people, again, see if they're really excited. And this is crucial. Launch way before you're ready. Get it out there, start getting feedback, see if the idea is any good, because you might be really wrong. And after you pitch it to bloggers, if no one cared, if you didn't borrow money, you don't have anything invested in it other than a few months' work. Kill it, start over. You just learned something. You just learned why the idea was bad. Start again. This is also crucial. Don't quit your day job. A lot of people think they need to get funding, quit their day job, start with a bunch of partners, and go off. What you really need to do is get that salary and find time on the weekends, on the evenings to work on your project and gradually lower your time commitment to your job. But only quit it once you actually have enough money. You'll also discover that salespeople are an extremely bad idea. And the reason is salespeople require capital, and they also generally mean that your idea isn't that good. Your idea isn't that good because it requires salespeople to convince people it's good. If it's good, it should convince people on their own. Great products build word of mouth. Another fallacy is that if we just had a big PR and marketing campaign, then everyone would know about our product and it'd be great. Well, that's not true either. Because if you can convince just a few bloggers that it's interesting and a few early users that it's something really unusual, then it will happen on its own. All right, this is sort of a few case studies here. This is my secret. It's really, really simple. The secret to getting massive press, and I have gotten massive press for my projects. So the first one, and it's the hardest, be really damned interesting. Right? Guy Kawasaki, in his famous books, says, if you're not getting press, get better reality. That's a more clever way of saying what I'm saying, but find something really interesting. And then you just need to convince 2 influential bloggers that it's really interesting. That will get you the stage. If it's not that interesting, it won't go anywhere. Another secret, this is for traditional print media, is focus on freelancers, not on staff writers. Freelancers will write about small people. Generally, staff writers won't. And the reason is that staff writers get stories from editors, whereas freelancers have to find stories and pitch to the editor. Become a cause that a freelancer would personally like, they're personally invested in. Let me go through here. So this is the quick example. This is the Magnitude homepage. This is one of my 2 companies. It's a music site, basically.
-3.
Do you mute?
-3.
OK. So this is the flow of things. I first got blogged. I got Creative Commons and Boing Boing to blog, and then the Inquirer, and then everything else happened. Then Fark, Slashdot, USA Today, NPR. This is from each one. In other words, there's a cascade. Each media watches the next media, and it happens automatically. Here are some of the story angles, and you'll have to download this to read this more. But think of as many edgy stories as you can, especially ones that haven't been written about, so that when a journalist contacts you, you can give them something really juicy to think about. Now, I'm a bit over time, so I'm going to skip these here. One thing I will mention about mine is this is the Magnitude homepage. This is my elevator pitch. We are not evil. It's very cute, makes people laugh. And then there's this massive paragraph. What people actually see is we're not evil, blah, 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 blah. And whoops, I didn't follow my own advice. In fact, I didn't know my advice at the time. This is another company I run called Buckman. It's a global book exchange. And it has a much simpler elevator pitch, which I can explain in that way there. OK, some final tips. Those of you who are French, you need to look at dedibox.com. For 30 euros a month, you can have a machine in 100 megabits. It's only available to French people, and it's a wonderful thing. I recommend you use PHP because it's a simple technology. You can hire people cheaply, but don't skimp on graphics. Do everything yourself. And if you're not technical, sorry, you're going to have to be technical. You're going to have to learn technology at some level. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You're going to have to read a lot of books. You're going to have to learn everything about running a company. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And if it succeeds, you get all the proceeds. And you can't lead people if you don't know how to do their job. Don't borrow money, because if you fail, you can just start again next week. That is all I wanted to say. Thanks very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, John. That is, you should really catch John in the corridors. He has such a great advice.